Good evening and welcome to the Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee. Today is Wednesday, May 25th. I should really say good afternoon. We have a couple of introductions to make. First, we have a new member of our committee, and I would like to introduce Roy Green to everyone, and I'm hoping he can just take a few moments to introduce himself.
Yes, thank you, Marie. So I'm Roy Green. I currently work at Cooper Companies as an ESG manager, and I have been in the environmental and sustainability field for over 20 years, and I have lived in Penfield for over 15 years.
Thank you very much. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
We do have a public participation period in this, so if just to announce now, while no one is in the audience, if you would like to call in at 340-8771 or reach us online at penfield.org, please do so now. And I'd like to make another introduction, and that is to announce and introduce Sarah Waterman, who's here remotely, as our new sustainability engineer. So congratulations,
Hi.
Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping you can just talk a few minutes about your priorities and goals.
Sure. So I'm excited to have accepted this position and still get to work under Mark Valentine. And as the sustainability engineer, I'm excited to both work on and help develop the sustainability code, ideally with the help of EEAC, and further the town's efforts towards the different clean energy communities, goals, and high impact items, and whatever else we can do to make the town more green.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Ryan, is there anyone who has called in?
No calls.
Thank you very much. Then we'll move on to item number 4, which is we want to discuss the next location for our for our electric car chargers. Sarah, I know that we have some plans in the works, and then we have some plans to be made, and maybe you could tee this up for the committee.
Sure. So this is a lot of kind of a siting discussion of where the best location is for them. We have talked in the previous years, about putting charging stations and the Four Corners area in one of the town's public parking lots. There's discussion of if it would be a fee associated with it, and obviously long term we'd have to consider what that fee would be. Mark Valentine is pulling up what is the town hall right now and zooming into the current charging station there. We do have plans this year to put one next to it, and we actually have funding for that, which I will address under our Clean Energy Communities discussion.
And I can jump back to the Four Corners one. I just didn't want to move the screen
Sure.
as they were pulling it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would appreciate it. And then I'm not sure, I think this is part of a broader discussion, which is, what do we want the infrastructure of electric vehicle charging stations and electric vehicles to look like? What are we doing? What's our plan? And now that we have a sustainability engineer in place, I think we can tackle some of these larger questions, right? And use this committee.
I think that's great. It'd be beneficial to have kind of a town-wide plan, at least for car charging stations. So both that could be public stations as well as private. We have both in town right now. Because eventually the expectation is that we will have car charging stations similar to we have gas stations, but most people just don't want to go to a corner to charge their car. They'd rather charge their car when they're at a park or charge their car when they're at a gas station or at home. But having those amenities in our parks and at our town facilities, that can be very beneficial. It looks like Mark pulled up the parking lot in Four Corners. Yep. Okay. Off of 5 Mile Line Road. Mm-hmm. So that is one of 2 parking lots we just recently started discussing putting charging stations at. And that's near a number of local businesses, restaurants, and that would mean that people could go to those types of businesses and charge while they're there. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sarah.
There is kind of some background work that would need to be put into that kind of thing of working with RG&E and completing a plan for what actual stations we want to put there, just because there's different heads. And there's different networks that you can be on and those kinds of things. If we're charging for the electricity for these stations, then we will need to be on a network. The town facilities charging stations, we do not charge money for.
Okay. Just for the purposes of everyone watching, I just want to summarize where the electric charging stations are that are town-owned right now. I believe there's one coming, soon to be two, at the town hall. There is some at the library. There's one at Harris Wayland Park, correct?
I believe that's correct, and I think Bob Knauer can speak to that as well.
Right. There's, one at Harris Wayland Park. It's in the parking lot where the lodge is opposite Harris Road School.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's the only park that has a charging station right now.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. One thing I wanted to mention, and Sarah, you're probably aware, particularly for the Four Corners future stations, there's probably some dollars available in the New York Make Ready program for infrastructure, where I believe they will pay up to 90% of infrastructure, meaning to bring the service to that site. That's one location where an RG&E service would have to be established. All the other locations, they're already tapping into an electric service that's associated with town property.
Yeah, that's correct. And that cost would be associated just with that RG&E installation.
Right.
It would be reasonable if the town wanted to consider using another potential grant from Clean Energy Communities towards another station location.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about adding charging stations, how many should be at a site? Like, what are the guidelines that we should be aiming for?
So at this time, as a municipal entity putting in stations, it's generally better to start at a lower number than a higher number, just because it's unclear how many people are going to be using it. However, rather than using a single head mount, using a dual head mount is a lot more beneficial. So my recommendation at this time would be to put one double head mount likely in the Four Corners area. And that's obviously up for discussion with the committee to see if they have any other recommendations, both of location and of number of mounts.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Are we proposing level 2 chargers or level 3 fast chargers?
So at this time, we'd be proposing level 2 chargers. Level 3 chargers are faster, but they draw a lot more power and have a significantly higher cost. And generally, level 3 chargers are more, generally for siting them, you put them closer to major highways like I-90 rather than 441.
Right, and you'd put them in places where people are not planning to park very long, so that would change your siting and your infrastructure requirements as well. It may be worth considering if some of these locations are in and out, you're in and out in a 30-minute time frame versus you're going to stay for a couple hours.
That's definitely a strong consideration. I think the approach right now is more associated with the restaurants in the area where people are likely to stay for more than half an hour. But I think that's definitely something we can consider and maybe see where other committee members fall on that. Also considering with that, the cost of a level 3 charger is significantly higher than a level 2.
And is the grants that are available through NYSERDA or the Clean Energy Program offered on level 3?
So the grants that I'm talking about from the Clean Energy Program are basically, right now we're in the process of completing that we can get action grants for of about $5,000. That would likely cover one dual head for the level 2. For level 3, it goes up significantly, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Bob might know, but
Yep.
I'm not sure.
For a level 3 charger, a single head without installation, the cost of the equipment is probably $35,000 to $40,000. In the past, and I don't know currently, but NYPA was doing some grants, but as Sarah mentioned, they were primarily focusing on heavily used roadways like the thruway. A secondary, you might be able to argue that 441 could be, a secondary location. But right now, I'm not aware of the dollars that are available for that. If there was money available, then taking advantage of the New York Make Ready program for a higher level of service to support a level 3 should probably be part of, the discussion or the study.
That makes sense.
So in addition to the Four Corners, I guess, one of the things you mentioned is, people want to charge their cars when they're doing something else. And should we be aiming to have chargers at all our parks, that kind of thing?
I guess it would depend on what the usage has been so far and what the expected usage will be as more EVs come into the market and come online, right? So have we done any kind of research or studies into the usage currently for existing ones or communities similar size, like a benchmarking exercise? And have we also looked at potential growth in the market in relation to a community like ours?
So I'm too new to answer that question, but maybe Sarah and Mark can.
At this time, we have not completed those studies.
I know we all are always having conversation with developers as well. So I think one is looking at our parks. I know currently Wegmans has been talking to us about looking to add car charging stations at their facilities. I know we've talked to Walmart in the past and some of the other developers as they've come in with new developments. We've got a couple of mixed-use projects. Bob's also on our planning boards. The mixed-use projects are coming in. We're having conversations with them. So any new development, at least put the infrastructure in, put in some, additional conduit. So whether you allocate a couple now, but you've got, room and availability in the future. So not only on our side, but we are looking comprehensively as we look at new developments to encourage developers to put the infrastructure in. So, hey, what's the cost of a piece of conduit or have stuff set up for it. So as we build out or go into the future, they're set up for it as well. But that's part of, doing the study is to start to look at all of our areas and, what makes sense in the parks and what makes sense. We've kind of rolled it out slowly. We were, I believe, the first community in the county to have a car charging station, which Bob helped to shepherd that through at the community center. I think that was 2010, 2012 that went in, I think. And then
somewhere around that time frame.
And then at about 2014, we got the one back here, and as of yet, we haven't charged at our stations. That's something we got to kind of look at long range. Does that make sense? Financially, whether we need to or not. We haven't charged, whether Wegmans does or not. Obviously, that, that's up to them. We haven't dictated that, but, I think it's good to keep in the forefront as we, see these things roll out or have grant opportunities or other locations.
Yeah, and
Thus far.
the community center station does have a kilowatt hour meter on it, so you can, by manually reading that meter and looking at the time frame, you can get an idea how much that one's been used. I'm not sure about the town hall one. It was supposed.
It's used consistently, I would
Okay.
say, yeah.
Yeah, to have I know it's used pretty consistently, and I know there's no meter at Harris Whalen.
Okay.
And
Sarah?
we can actually look at the town's RG&E bills to determine the usage for the town facilities chargers. We may face some cost if we choose to upgrade the chargers at the town facilities currently, because I don't believe they're set up to be networked, which means they're also not set up to charge for electricity.
Right.
But that's part of why going forward, I would recommend getting chargers that are able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and to Roy's point, I would really enjoy seeing some of the usage statistics, usage data. I can tell that it's used here at the town hall because I'm here, but I'm not necessarily at the library all the time or Harris Whalen. So I would be really interested in that data in terms of helping us plan where we're going.
And I think it's worthwhile doing a benchmark study. That's something that the engineering department can work with both finance and the DPW to get the information needed for that. As for looking at other towns and what they're experiencing, that's something that we can also reach out to other towns to do. And there are a number of them on both sides of Rochester that have multiple charging stations.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing we have to think about is, I know that the town has purchased their first, or they're going to purchase their first electric vehicle, I believe. And I'm assuming that moving forward that would continue to increase. So we have to meet the needs of residents, but also our own town services as well.
And
Yeah.
I think specifically for town services, we'll need to have at minimum an internal discussion of where the ideal location for that is, between safety for our vehicles as well as what procedures there are for charging.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if at the point that the town gets a electric vehicle that needs to be charged, it would probably be a good idea to have, wherever it's located, a dedicated charger just for that vehicle, for town use only.
So going forward, Sarah, I know we've talked a little bit high level and low level. It's sort of been a jumble of conversation, but it sounds like you're going to pursue a benchmark study with the engineering department.
I think that's reasonable, as well as reaching out to other towns to determine or even just get information on what their experience currently is,
Okay.
like actual detailed information for their charging stations as well.
And then short term, we had already planned to add another charger here at the town hall, and also had planned, it looks like we had somewhat made a determination maybe before me that the Four Corners was also very important for us.
That was definitely determined before you,
Okay.
but I don't believe funds have been allocated to it yet.
Okay,
So that may need some further discussion.
sure. And it seems very timely considering we're starting our budget discussions next month. Okay, very
Great.
good. Is there anything anyone wishes to add about this topic? Comment, questions, revelations? Okay, and so Roy, you have to jump in, right? Okay,
Yes.
great, okay. All right. Moving on, Sarah, I know, wanted to give us a review of CCA to date. How's it going? And some data, things like that.
So at this time, the phone calls to the town have kind of settled off a little. And there's less people calling, asking questions about the program. For the accounts enrolled, that's 8,238 accounts, and 35 of them are for 100% green. What that means is 35 residents took the action to opt up to that 100% program. We're discussing maybe in the late summer, early fall, program again.
Could you repeat that? You cut out just for a moment. Late summer, early fall?
Late summer, early fall, doing an education program with Good Energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just to continue to update residents and let them know how the program is going and how to enroll if they so choose.
Okay. Are there any questions for Sarah?
What's our current rates? Are we doing good still in terms of compared to the market? Like how, yeah, I know our rates are fixed with the CCA. How are they comparing to the non-fixed?
So I truthfully didn't check the RG&E rates today, but as of about a week ago, the 50% program was almost a penny less an hour, a kilowatt hour, which is good for our fixed rate. For the 100% green rate, it was about 0.3 of a penny difference, where the 100% green is just slightly higher than the RG&E rate.
Thank you.
Yeah, the last.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the last rate I saw was 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour in the last week or so.
For 100%.
No, for RG&E.
For RG&E variable rate.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Just needed the clarification.
Bob, was that the 30-month look back, or was that just a daily rate?
I think that was a daily rate.
Okay, so the
I know
last
that
30-month
fluctuates.
look
I'm
back-
not sure if that was daily or if it was a monthly.
Okay, the
but-
last 30-month look back I looked at was about 6.5,
Okay.
which is, it still means our fixed rate is good for the 50% program. Even for the 100% green, that's not bad.
No, not at all.
But we are still having Good Energy update that monthly on the penfieldcca.com website so that residents can look at it, compare it, and decide if they want to stay in the program or not. Because the town board very much wanted residents to understand this is their option and there's no cost to opt in or no cost to opt out.
And how often can they opt in or out? Is it once a year or is it once a month?
So realistically, they can do it anytime they want. However, it takes about 30 days to take effect, which is generally one billing cycle. So they could essentially do it every other billing cycle effectively. And Mark's pulling up the current 30-day prior average supply rate for RG&E, the prior 3-month average supply rate in comparison to Penfield Green, which is 50% green.
Is the delivery charges assumed to be the same under the green versus the regular?
Yeah, so this only affects the supply rate, the electricity supply rate. So the electricity delivery rate, gas delivery rate and gas supply rate are all the same with RG&E because they're still the people delivering those utilities. But the electricity rate is different for supply.
From a communication standpoint, we have our director of communications sitting in this committee, and I just want to make sure we utilize his capabilities. Is there some messaging? I know you talk about autumn and late summer. Is there anything we should be doing now that we're not?
So we just in March did another sweep of the people that weren't included in the very original grouping. I think right now is the time to kind of let it settle down and let the residents see how the program's going for a few months,
Okay.
which is why we discussed late summer, early fall.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Sarah, or any ideas that you would like to see happen? No? Okay. Sarah, thank you very much for that. And I think you're still in the hot seat because we have updates on clean energy community campaigns as well.
That's okay. So for clean energy campaigns, primarily right now, we've been focusing on the community campaigns, both for electric vehicles and for clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency. So that's 2 campaigns. We've been working with Good Energy to put those classes on, as well as not Good Energy. We've been working with Color Penfield Green to put those classes on, and Heat Smart Monroe with Color Penfield Green for the clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency one. Those are both classes as well as outreach events that Color Penfield Green has been tabling at and sharing flyers and just educating our community as much as we can. With those, we have completed the electric vehicle campaign. I believe we actually discussed that at the last meeting. And we have applied for the $5,000 grant that we can get for completing that campaign. And actually, as of this week, we successfully got that grant.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. And congratulations to the team because we all worked hard on it. So we should be getting that $5,000 check relatively soon, and that's being applied to the station at the town hall for that installation.
Out of curiosity, do you have a notification you could share with me? I can announce it at the town board meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
I can't do it tonight, but next week at the ledge meeting would
That's
be great.
okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll send that on.
Well, congratulations, everyone. That's wonderful. Great.
And also, we're still working on the clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency campaign that we are almost halfway to our goal. But because we're still on the way, in August, there will be another set of classes going on being hosted by Color Penfield Green at the community center.
I should tell you we have Mr. Hebner from Color Penfield Green in the audience. I don't know if you can see him.
Oh, great. I can't. I'm glad he's there to hear. So in August is the next set of classes. Color Penfield Green did so graciously offer the EV class again, just for residents that may not have seen it in the last year, because our first set was in September of 2021. And hopefully things will continue as they are, and we'll get the last set of participants that we need, and be able to apply for that $5,000 action grant as well. And then the town will have to decide where to allocate that money.
So I think there'd be a lot of interest in electric vehicles given the volatility of gas prices right now. Are you seeing anything in the community? Some interest in electric vehicles?
A lot of my teachers have been talking about getting electric vehicles recently. They specifically actually cite the gas prices.
Okay. So hopefully it'll be a really successful class. I took it last year. I thought it was really good. That was really well done.
Hey, Sarah, what's your goal for the education pieces? Is it a number of attendees, certain number that you're looking for?
It's actually a number of attendees that purchase a system or have in the clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency class. They can also have an energy audit and purchase kind of upgrades to their home, whether that's insulation upgrades or window upgrades that cause it to be more energy efficient. Currently, we have 2 residents that have done what I just mentioned, and we need to complete the program 3 residents that purchase heat pumps or a geothermal system. So those are a little harder to get, as it takes a long time both to have the quotes be done, get the materials for the system, and get installation completed. We do have some residents that are interested in that, and we don't in the classes present it as you need to do this or anything like that. It's presented as these are ways that you can help be more energy efficient in your home, and long term that would also lower your home cost. Well, your home
Energy
needs,
cost?
not the value of the home. So that's the Clean Heating, Cooling, and Energy Efficiency campaign. The EV campaign that's already completed, we needed 5 participants to purchase EVs. Some of those participants will not actually get their EV until probably about December this year, but they have already purchased it and signed agreements.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions for Sarah?
Yes, how are those goals set?
Those goals are set by NYSERDA.
Okay.
NYSERDA kind of runs the CEC program, and they actually changed last year just slightly, which one of the programs it made it a little easier and one it made it a little harder. The goal of the program overall, from the town's point of view, as well as partially from NYSERDA's, is to educate residents on these different energy sources, as well as ways that they can be more efficient.
So once the grant's achieved, are we going to continue doing these education sessions and set an internal goal ourselves?
That has not been discussed at this point.
It's part of that broader conversation now that we have a sustainability engineer in place.
Sure.
What is it, where is it we want to go with it? And I was just thinking, I know this is your first meeting too, and I'm very happy to share some of those documents with you to make sure that, you have a copy of them as well, the guidelines. So just have the background info.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem.
And it was discussed potentially doing a campaign on solar for homes, like individual homes, that we haven't taken any action on at this point since we're already doing the other 2 campaigns. But there are other things that we can do potential campaigns on too.
So besides solar, do you have any of those off the top of your head? If you don't, that's okay.
I don't remember any.
I do not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Mark
Bob, you got any?
Valentine may have a sheet in front of him with high impact action items on it that may address that.
Mark Valentine may have left that back at his desk.
You get a
and
pretty
didn't bring it down.
good eye roll there.
I tried.
Sarah might have handed it to Mark before she left, and Mark didn't bring it with him today.
That's okay. But that is on the high impact action item list for clean energy communities.
Okay. Any other questions for Sarah?
If we run a set of the classes with the intent of getting residents to sign up, and we do not get enough residents to sign up, do we fail to get the grant money?
It depends if we continue running the classes. There's not actually a set deadline for the campaign to end, but I will completely acknowledge that Color Penfield Green has been a huge proponent of those classes, and they've been doing a lot of the education pieces on that. So I think that would need to be a discussion with the town and Color Penfield Green if they're interested in continuing doing those educational classes.
Not sure if he's nodding his head. We'll have to ask afterwards.
That's fair. There's a group of about 3 or 4 residents that have had a huge role in that. They're very educated in these topics, and they're very excited to share the information with residents and help educate them.
just having gone through the program myself, it was just fascinating. And I think, one of those pieces is the electric vehicle show that we
Yes.
just had, actually. So I want to make sure that we talk about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so before we move on to goals and priorities for 2022, we did have 2 events that I just wanted to recap because it's been since March that we met. And I did want Bob to be able to talk a little bit about the electric vehicle show on April 9th and how that was received. I think it's just getting bigger and bigger.
It is. Yeah, I think we had the first electric vehicle show at the Penfield Community Center in 2012. I think there were 4 or 5 electric cars there. And the one that we had just a few months ago, we had probably, I think, if I remember the number, it was around 72 cars that were there with almost 200 people signed up for that event. This year, it was an order of magnitude larger than it was 2 years prior when we had it. So, in the past, we've traditionally done the spring show, which is around Earth Day, Earth Week in April. And then we, in fact, just got an agreement with RIT. The fall show at RIT is going to be September 24th, which is a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that gets a very large crowd. That in the past has been, the largest show. But certainly for Penfield, it's nice to have it right in our town. People come from all over the area. It's advertised through a national site, and during the spring show and the fall show, within approximately a 2-week period, they have shows all over the United States. So when you go to the site, you can put in your zip code and you can see where they are, in your geographical area. But we're happy that the town will host that site. We work pretty closely with GRCC in Rochester, Genesee Regional Clean Cities. They've been kind of a partner on that for quite a few years in both the spring and the fall show. So it was a huge success. This year we actually had a food truck there that one of the folks from Color Penfield Green arranged. We were able to get at the very last minute. We did find out in April in Rochester, not that many food trucks are on the road. So, but we were able to get one at that event.
Was it an electric one? No.
It was not, but we arranged ahead of time. We plugged into building power.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't have to run their generator, which was,
That's
that
a
was
good
the
thing.
goal. So.
Bob, you've been running this since we put in the car charging station at the community center, so
Yes.
this either had to be the 9th or 10th year.
Yeah.
If it was 2012-ish, I remember we did the ribbon cutting for the car charging station, and you did it with a kickoff with the car
Yeah,
show.
that's
so
right.
It's got to be 9 or
Yeah.
10 years now that you've been running that. So
Thank you
obviously it's
very
only,
much.
only gaining in popularity and continuing to grow.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think, too, even probably more so, the way that energy costs are going, I think it's going to become more and more popular.
Bob, would you mind repeating the date for the RIT car show and time?
Sure, that's September 24th, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I forget what parking lot that's in, but it's just opposite the Galisano Sustainability complex there is where we've
The one
we've
with the
had
car
it.
chargers in it.
Yes.
I think that's either S or T,
Yeah.
but it's on the north side of the of RIT.
So yeah, for the, I think this will be the maybe the fourth year we've had it at RIT, minus, we did have it last fall, but the previous year, of course, we had to cancel it, so.
Very good. And then I also wanted to just review something that this committee was tangentially involved with and supported, which is the tree planting event on April 23rd, so the day after Earth Day. And I know, Mark, you were there. I wanted to extend my gratitude to Catherine Dubreck for all of her organization. I don't know if you want to give a brief summary of how it went.
Yeah, I think it was a great turnout. That was at Rothfuss Park, so we had a tree giveaway, tree planting. They had, excuse me, you could plant a tree that day, get a tree, take it home. There were some education efforts, there as well. So I think it worked out well. We actually just got the second half of the grant. Check came in today. So that was grant-based as well. So we got a $1,000 grant to plant some new trees. Planted those around the park. We've got the stone dust path going around the park loop. So to look to plant trees, get some shade on that. Make that a nicer spot, and then as well as in conjunction with the Soil and Water, Monroe County Soil and Water, they do a tree sapling giveaway. So we paired it with that, and we gave away white birch trees, and then as well as red maples, which is the town trees. So we had 150 trees, and I think Catherine took the last 2 home at the end of the day. So I think we planned that out well, gave away 150 trees. And we had Girl Scouts, we had Boy Scouts, we had colored Penfield green, we had the garden group was there, we had the trails group was there, conservation board, helped host that event. So I think it was a good community group, and I think turned out to be a nice day and a great event. So hopefully that'll turn into an annual event, as we've done in the past with cleanup day, and then we had. Good Neighbor Day, shortly thereafter, with Rothfuss Park. So I think it was a good kind of couple of weekends in a row between the car charging, the
Good.
tree giveaway, and then as well as Good Neighbor Day.
Yeah, I know Catherine would like to do it annually. She would like to make this an annual event, so I really look forward to that.
If I can add, we also had Healthy Yards Monroe and the Rochester Museum and Science Center there. And Healthy Yards Monroe was educating on pollinators, and the museum was showing their Enviroscape, which is a display that educates kids on the water table and stormwater. So there were a lot of kids that could participate in it too.
Thank you so much. And you're right, you were there as well, so I do want to mention that too. And our Director of Communication, Chris. Okay, any other questions about the tree planting or the electric car show? Okay, so our last topic on the agenda is goals and priorities for 2022. And I know Sarah really kind of touched upon this in her opening comments about what she sees as some work that needs to be done and how this committee can be supportive. One of the things that caught my eye were your concern over updating our codes and making sure that our codes are certainly timely, kind of taking into consideration trends and things like that. I will also just add to this discussion that I do have a information item for June 8th for the town board work session so that they can chime in on their support of climate smart communities and clean energy communities. So that is on the town board work session agenda. And I apologize for not getting it on sooner. But to your point about codes, is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Sarah, that we should be turning our attention to?
So specifically with codes, we've discussed solar, geothermal, wind, and battery storage. if there's an item that the committee feels would be applicable to add to that sustainability code that we're working on, that would be very helpful. And the engineering department's hope is to bring sample code, well, draft code to EEAC for review as that gets more progress, just so that we have basically more input on a level with people that are educated in those types of things. So that's the code side of things. With clean energy communities, if we have the town board support, there are a number of high impact items that we can pursue that we have not already pursued. So if the committee has any specific recommendations based on those high impact action items, then that would be helpful focus. We have discussed those high impact action items previously, and I believe we've distributed a lot of materials on that. If you need materials on that, we can provide those again by email, or you can go to the Clean Energy Community site within NYSERDA's website.
Great. And I'll make sure that Roy has a copy of everything that was sent out prior. So there's two things on the table, right? Which is talking about sustainability code, what might be some options, some areas we need to address, and then also any high impact action items we can take under the Clean Energy Communities program.
Yeah, and there we can broaden the spectrum if that's so desired. These are just items that we have discussed previously, and especially the sustainability code, it needs to be addressed sooner than later.
Is that something that, besides today, that this group can have work sessions around in future meetings?
That is, yes.
Okay.
Basically, the approach to that would be the engineering department, so Mark and I in this regard, would bring draft code to the committee, send that ahead of time, and then at a meeting discuss that. That's how we've addressed that before. Bob Knauer actually has given input on the sustainability code previously, and that's been very helpful. At this point, the goal is to address all of those items within the same code draft, and get the support of the town board.
Okay. So let me throw that out there then, open it up for discussion. In addition to what Sarah mentioned, is there anything else you would add?
In terms of the sustainability code, I know we talked about commercial entities wanting to put in or talking about chargers. Is that something that would need to be captured in that code as well, or is that just routine like street lamps? That doesn't really.
Charging stations would be beneficial to have that in the code. Right now, we've only had 2 commercial entities come to us requesting, and there's a basic New York State standard, but there's not a very detailed standard for the town of Penfield. So that's a good addition.
Yeah, I think what's important on the charging stations, more in the commercial aspect, is ADA compliance. That those guidelines are included. And that's probably, one thing that at least should be communicated as part of like a code.
I'd agree with you, Bob. It would also be helpful to have some uniform signage or parking markings, rather than having different ones all over town.
Okay. Anything else?
With that, which is kind of a sidebar from updating the code, it would be helpful if the committee has any input on policy around charging stations for the town. Basically right now, because the stations are free, there isn't like a 2-hour time limit or anything like that. There's not a way to determine cost if we go in that direction. So if any of the community members have experience creating those kinds of policies or have seen them elsewhere and they can share them, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, one of the issues sometimes is you have more charging stations is just enforcement where people that aren't charging are using those spots. And the only way it can really be enforced is it has to go through, and a local law has to be passed for enforcement. Otherwise, people will do it and get away with it. So I don't think it's really it hasn't been an issue yet, but as more and more are put in some states, it's a huge issue.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I'm just curious about whether there are other towns near us or even not so near us that, we don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel all the time. So, and I'm fine with shamelessly looking at other people's code saying, what do we like and what do we not like? Has anyone seen anything recently that they particularly thought was well done?
In E-Code 360 is helpful with a lot of that stuff. We use them, as does a lot of communities. So through E-Code, we've got resources there. They've helped us search in the past, and they say, we know this community has this items or this has this. So, as you said, we've kind of borrowed some of the stuff already that we've, started from in generating. So we're not starting from zero, and we'll happily, use that, service to search out. But as you have everybody's code electronically, it's much easier to search and much easier to, pull stuff up. And, they've offered to help us in the past with that. So that's something we can reach out to them again and say, hey, you've got codes from across, they go beyond New York State, across their service area. What do you see? Which ones do you think, are good? What have others done? And, they'll happily, share it with us. We can search it ourselves and then.
Is that something that any resident can search, or is it something limited to where you can just look at Penfield?
You can look at any different code. Having the service through them, they'll help us search. They can just put in sustainability and it'll pull keywords from other locations. Right now, as a resident, you'd have to open up E-Code, look at Penfield, and then search theirs. You'd have to, so I don't think you can do a broad search across their whole network.
Okay.
But you can look up the town of Perrington's code, you can look up Webster's code, and then you could go into their section and search sustainability, see what they had for it. But since we have a contract with, E-Code 360, that's been a benefit of having that contract is, have them do some of those searches for us, and then it can go across to all of them. You don't have to open up each and every town that they have.
Okay. I'm hearing that the code and getting the code up to date is a priority. So just thinking about how we want to do this, is it feasible that we send around some topics for how would you like to make this move forward? And I kind of defer to people that have written code before.
And I think, like anything, it's hard to start from scratch. So I think have staff, and we've started on it. We shared some of the solar stuff in the past with this group. So I think, as we look towards the fall, summer's kind of tough for everybody's kind of going different directions. But I think as we work towards the fall, have a section done, and then we can email it out to the group, get some feedback on that, come to the next meeting, talk about it, discuss it, gather input, we can make changes, and then kind of work through that. And then hopefully towards year's end, we'll have something to, present to the town board. The town board, make sure they're comfortable with it, and then, we'd have to schedule a public hearing, open it up to the public at large, get the public's, input on that, what are we missing, what haven't we done? But I think we've kind of in the past sent out sections and then make it an agenda item for the next meeting, saying, okay, we're going to talk about, geothermal at the next meeting. We sent out the section ahead of time. what are your thoughts? What's your feedback on that? And then, kind of work, piece by piece.
And that's proven to work in the past, that method.
Okay. And everyone is comfortable with that? Okay. Great. The high-impact items you also had put out there, and I was curious about having a discussion about that with everyone as well.
Sure. So I believe Mark pulled up the website with the list of high impact items, if that would help facilitate the conversation.
So are you already considering the Climate Smart Communities certification?
So it's been discussed previously, but the town board has not essentially backed that at this point.
I have
At
it
this
on for
point,
June 8th.
That's the one you have on for June 8th, okay.
Yeah, the
Climate
climate,
smart or clean energy or both.
she said both. You kind of combined the
did.
two at the same time.
I
Yeah.
did.
The clean energy community one, when it came out, it has a little bit more bang for the buck right now, it seems like, from our perspective. So the other one is a little higher level. This one feeds into it.
It does, but I'm
So-
just thinking from a longer-term goal perspective, it'd be really nice to say, we want to reduce our carbon footprint by 80% by 2050, and have an actual goal, stick that stake in the ground, and then our recommendations to the town is to work towards that goal.
Yeah, so we've
So-
talked about the climate smart one for, I want to say 4 or 5 years now, and it's just, I think because of its broad-reaching components, it's been a little harder for us to wrap our hands around, which is, most recently, that's when Marie kind of
We've
looked at it.
followed a lot of the
and-
elements of it, and this group,
Yes.
we keep abreast of those and done a lot of the items, and we've kind of debated, do you jump in, do you not, similar to getting a LEED certified building. You can do all the elements of a LEED certified building, but, do you need to pay to put the plaque on the wall that says LEED certified or not? So, but we've kind of followed a lot of those elements, the car charging stations, some of the other stuff. We're looking at LED lights, across the community. We're doing a lot of the things. So I think clean energy communities, that one seems like, we're kind of there and ready to maybe jump into that one. Obviously, that's up to the town board and, their decision. The climate smart one, I think maybe we take it a step at a time, get into the clean energy one, and then see as a building block to the, climate smart. But we've kind of been following along, a lot of the stuff they've got so far. But once we jump in, we got to make sure we're committed to it and make sure we've got the budget, the resources and stuff to keep up with it. So
And the hiring of a sustainability engineer
was,
is a huge step.
that was a major first step, is to have
Yes.
that, is to make sure we had staffing in place that could handle it. And as we had these programs in and the state DEC adds new programs to us, whether we join them or not, we just find ourselves pulled in more directions every day. And sure as we all do, just making sure when we join a program, we do it properly and we can, back it up, sustain it, keep it, do it right. So that's what we've kind of been monitoring as we've gone along. We just haven't decided, and ultimately the town board is the group that'll decide whether we're jumping in or not, and then we'll take our
And
lead
one
from
of-
them.
Thanks, Mark. And one of the big items with the big differences between clean energy communities and climate smart communities is that climate smart communities require a lot of the actions that you take to be redone every 5 years. So for example, if we were to do community campaigns for clean energy communities, you can do that. And then if you want to do something else and something different that you feel would be more beneficial than repeating the same thing, then you don't have to repeat the same thing. But in climate smart communities, you have to repeat those things every 5 years for them to still count and be valued. So there's a number of items that fall into that category. And as the town has been slowly progressing into being more green and more sustainable, the town's been taking singular actions or large actions like the LED changeover and doing those. And those can be potentially applied for some of them to climate smart communities. But without the support of the town board and this committee, we haven't taken those formal actions of submitting the documentation and requesting approval.
And has this committee made a formal recommendation to go after the climate smart community certification? Have we come to, do we do that? When your June 8th meeting, are you going in saying that we're recommending that this occurs, or are we just having a discussion on June 8th?
So we've gotten just about as close as we could to making that recommendation, but without actually kind of introducing it to the town board, it's a little tough. It's kind of bounced back and forth. The keystone starting point is a resolution that the town has to do. So we have actually gotten to the point of drafting a resolution. And that's where one of the steps that needs to go to them to look at the concept and see if they're in alignment with the concept, and then have them verify, draft that resolution and make that, get that in place. And that's kind of the key component of starting that process, whereas all of these high impact action items kind of feed into that as well.
And that resolution is specifically for climate smart communities. You don't need to pass a resolution for clean energy communities. You just need to complete the actions and submit for approval. We have started submitting for approval because we needed to do that so we could start getting the grant money towards other projects that we wanted to pursue. And just to clarify, the high impact action items that we're discussing are specifically for clean energy communities. The climate smart communities have a number of items that are on a point system, but they're not considered high impact items. It's kind of just terms, but
Sure, and
just to differentiate between the two.
And I guess the reason for bringing that up is the climate smart community certification, I believe, was a high impact item under the clean energy communities.
You're right. And it's actually kind of like a game, because the high impact action items for clean energy communities, a number of them, you have to get approval through NYSERDA under clean energy communities to get points for them in climate smart communities. So it's a little bit of the cart before the horse if you do climate smart before clean energy.
And I think a lot of communities around us have registered for climate smart community certifications and are working towards achievement. So there may be an opportunity to register, work towards achievement, set a goal for that achievement at some point as an interim goal, but with the idea in mind that you're trying to reduce your carbon footprint by that 2050 date of 80%.
You're correct. And at the last meeting, we did discuss the communities surrounding us that are pursuing clean energy communities and climate smart communities. And there were a lot more pursuing clean energy at that time than climate smart, but there were still a fair number that were registered and just not actually achieving what's required yet for climate smart.
Right.
What's preventing us from applying for these certifications thus far?
Well, honestly, go ahead, Sarah.
So it's a few things. It's one that we can't just apply for them and pursue everything at once. Staffing has been an issue, as Marie addressed, of getting a sustainability engineer. That should help staffing in that regard, as the engineering department does most of that. There is some work that comes from the DPW, both from the director as well as Jim Kreckman, who I believe is a foreman, and maybe Mark can correct me if I'm wrong.
He is, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But it's basically the town's not trying to bite off more than they can chew. So if you throw your name in the hat for every single thing that you can possibly do, then you may not be doing all of those things very well, whereas we can address one or two things at a time and do them ideally.
To your point, Sarah, it's really important that the town manages everything so that it can do it well. In some ways, I think that's a very good thing from a management perspective. It can be very frustrating from a patient's perspective. So,
Yeah, I think
very much.
the big thing that we did that took over the effort was doing the CCA.
yes.
And I think that's when the Climate Smart really took a backseat. It was more important to really honor some community members that had brought that forward as something to do and to go there. So that was a long process, and that's, I think now we're just being able to open a lot of this back up.
Right. Poised to grow, I guess, is how I would
Yep.
sort of define the efforts right now. Would you say?
And
Nope.
No, you wouldn't say
Yes,
that?
I would. I would.
And
Definitely.
that's not to leave out, there may be other items that residents want the town or feel the town should pursue than just G communities and climate smart communities. And that's part of why we have these meetings, so that if residents do have other items, and that's why the town board has meetings, that they can speak and share those interests and thoughts, and it can be a community effort and not just town staff pushing for one thing.
So to that point, have we done any kind of surveys out to the community to ask them what their priorities are? And in the corporate world, we call it a materiality assessment. But have we done that sort of interest reach or outreach to determine, like I know single-use plastics is a high item right now, biodiversity is a high item right now, carbon and climate is a high item right now. These are all major issues that are starting to become more and more important to residents, and yeah, I don't have data to back that up, but in the general world, it's happening. So have we done that outreach to determine what's material to our residents?
At this time, we haven't done outreach. What we've been going in the direction of is that we had, prior to 2020, a number of residents and resident groups come to EEAC meetings and voice their interest in these different items. That's how community choice aggregation even was brought up as a discussion item in the first place. And that's part of why we publicize these meetings, so that residents can share that information.
Your point is well taken, though, about having a benchmark and having data to go off of. I think being data-driven is really important. So, again, not having the infrastructure in place until just very recently. Now I think we can do something like that. And when I say infrastructure, I mean Sarah.
Yes.
And the communications director.
And the communication director.
Yeah. And that sort of materiality assessment would typically look at multiple stakeholders. And sure, you have people that will come and talk to you because they want their voice heard in the town board meetings, and those are voices that are important, and we should respect those. But there's a lot of people that won't come to you and they won't talk about things unless you reach out and ask that stakeholder group what's of interest to them. So whether it's business owners or residents or certain areas of the underserved communities that we may have in our areas, we need to reach out and ask those questions. And if we did that, I think we might have a clearer picture on what to focus on as well.
That's a very good point. Is that something that you might be interested in helping with?
Sure, I've done materiality assessments before, and
Okay.
I can frame it in a way that would be representative and bring something back to the group.
I think that'd be great. And even if there was a small group from EEAC, including Roy, to kind of bring up questions and items that should be included on that'd be very helpful.
Roy, maybe we can connect offline and have that discussion and bring Sarah in as needed and able. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, good. Do we have a good action plan for now?
Yeah, so should we add that to our goals for 2022?
Yes. I would say so.
I think the closest we came was the land use for the golf course in terms of a recent survey. That, to me, would have been probably our last citizen involvement and,
But I think
Touching
before
on
that,
that,
it
but yeah.
wasn't recent.
no.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Even part of what's been addressed with the comprehensive plan that should be coming out soon, in sustainability, what some of those residents on that committee feel are beneficial items for the town.
Marissa, did
And
you want
that's-
to add anything?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not particularly. One thought that I had was in the surveying, I know there are a lot of very passionate youth, at least that I've experienced in the schools about this. I was wondering if that would be something I could help connect you with the school to get a possible feel of how the students think.
Absolutely. I think that would be great. And Dr. Putnam and I are always looking for ways to partner, and that would be a great involvement. Sounds good, Marissa. Anything else? I will write up some notes and some action plan for this. It won't be today, probably Friday. But if there's nothing else, I would like to just adjourn the meeting. Is everyone in agreement? Great. Thank you so much for your time.